Hello and welcome to Transformation Now, and we have a really good program today. I'm Rita Rocker Kraft, and I'm speaker, author, and trainer with SoaringHigher.rocks. And in my previous program, I talked with you a lot about interviewing, preparing for interviews, but it has everything to do with who you are personally as well as professionally, because we always tie those together. We can't separate who we are from a job, from a career. And so everything that I talked to you about today as far as searching and interviewing, etc., can also apply in your everyday life away from your job. So we talked a lot about who you are and doing what's important to you, doing what's inside of you that really resonates with you, rather than having the kind of job or career that maybe someone else said, you know, I think you ought to do this. No, you need to do who you are, what you're all about. So today I'm going to pick up on that from the aspect of searching, again, for the type of job you want. And I talked before about examining the skills that you have to use to create your future in your position. And so think about that. We are not who our parents say we are, a teacher, a counselor said we are, a sibling or a neighbor said we are. We are who God made us to be inside. And so that's so important. So I want you to think about some of these skills that you may have that could guide you into a whole different direction, maybe, where you're actually very happy in a new career. And one of them is influence. Do you have the ability to influence people? You have a knack for influencing them through your leadership abilities, through how you speak to them or public speaking. You seem to have great ideas on how to market a neighbor kid's product to people at school or whatever. Maybe you're motivating, and that's not manipulating, but you're a real motivator. You like to motivate people to do their best and to go out and try this and take a leap forward. And so you may be a great influencer, and those skills are very needed to influence and motivate people. Could be a teacher, could be someone like that in public relations where you're really helping people to get out because you're such a good influencer. It could be you're an organizer. Everybody needs organization. I know, especially when very busy high-end executives, maybe that's where you want to go someday, maybe not. But do you have the organizational skills? It could be organizing people's homes, which a lot of people need. It could be your interest in monitoring and tracking people's products. Operations managers, for instance, wow, they need to know how to keep several things together and keep track of all the things in a company, whether it's people, whether it's products, whether it's repairs. And so do you have organizational ability and you like to track and manage things? If you do, there's so many opportunities in being able to do that. And sometimes if people are very quiet, very shy, those are great jobs for them to have because they're more behind the scenes, monitoring, checking, ordering things, whatever the case may be. Maybe you love to help people, and that's in your heart. You know, whether it's somebody coming across the street, or you just want to help people. If you see somebody that's hungry, you want to give them food. I've done that a lot. And so you just have this thing, we call it a gift of helps. And so maybe that's what you have inside you. You get enjoyment out of teaching, out of encouraging, out of nurturing, out of counseling people. And so you could be a mentor, a coach, something like that. And so always think in the helps category, social workers. Most of them have a real heart for helps because they want to help people that are hurting, that need help. And so that's an excellent category if you find yourself always doing that, always making the elderly neighbor cookies or whatever the case may be. Okay, that's a gift. Creative, artistic, theatrical. Maybe you can design products or design whole environments like maybe an architect or an engineer or something like that. You like science. You always liked science classes. I didn't. I was scared of frogs and all that stuff. But you know, there's so many areas in creative people. And so maybe that's the area you were meant to go into instead of being an accountant. Maybe your heart and your mind, everything isn't actually being creative. That's the direction you want to go. Analytical. You like math, analyzing data, keeping up on the latest scientific data, things like that. But maybe you never thought about that area. You just kind of liked it in school and all that. Take classes and maybe try to go that way, where I know a lot of things in insurance and finances, accounting, they need analytical people. Producer. You like to see the fruit of your labor. You like to build furniture, you like to create jewelry, you like to do all these things. You love doing things with your hands, building homes, whatever the case may be. And so maybe other people, family, teachers said, no, you really need to get into this other area because this is where you'll make most of your money. Well, maybe that's not you. Or even if it is, if you're a producer, you can do awesome things with that. Maybe you like to cook. You have a cooking class. You could be a chef. You like crafts. You love to make things. Construction and building projects, again, are areas that you could go into because you see what you've done with your hands. And people love that. People love that. And so sometimes they don't need to be in an office job. They need to be in a creative job where they're working out on a location somewhere and doing something like that. Maybe you're adventuresome. Like I mentioned before, my son is in a position where he could never just sit at a desk or do something like that. Some people are just made to be adventuresome, and law enforcement, firefighting, military, or being a star athlete, or being on a football, basketball, baseball, hockey team, whatever the case may be, because that's where their heart is. So think about who you are, not what other people maybe thought you should do. Take stock of how computer literate you are. You may want to take some classes in that to be able to keep up. Written communications is always very important because people do judge us not only by how we speak, but how we write as well. And with texting nowadays, I've heard companies say, well, I wanted this person to really be a contact for me between our company and directors and vice presidents of other companies, especially when they're hiring people for jobs, but I can't because they will actually send them emails that are just like text messages, all run along words, no punctuation or anything. So again, that's a very important skill. So think about those today. Professional demeanor, your interview, and the impressions that you want to give are also very important. Like I've mentioned in a few other programs, our communication skills are critically important. People judge us within that first 7 seconds of meeting us. They judge us about our own self-esteem, our outlook on life, our economic and educational levels, our trustworthiness, our social position, our future success. People are making judgments about us within the first 7 seconds. They're making judgments in the first 20 seconds about us when we open our mouth and what we're saying and how we're speaking. So those are very, very critical. 55% of your communication skills is nonverbal. How you sit, stand, walk, enter a room, what you're doing with your hands, what you're doing with your facial expressions, what you're wearing. So 55%, that's over half. 38% is the quality of our voice. That's our expressions, our pitch, our tone. And so tone is just really critical. And then only 7% of the actual words that we use. And one of the examples that I've given before about the tone, the expression of our voice is I used to have a leadership program with the Chamber of Commerce, and as I was giving a program, kind of a retreat one day, I wanted to talk to people about just that, about their speaking. And so, I kind of used a very quick example, and I said, okay, so if I heard you do a great presentation, you had lots of good ideas, but I was in a rush to get to another meeting. So as I walked by you, I just wanted to give you a little kudos. So I walked up to someone, and they were sitting down, and I just said, I said, that was great. And I looked at her and I said, so how would you feel? And she said, oh, that would make me feel very good. I said, good. So then I walked up to a gentleman who I knew was the vice president of a new bank, and he was all by himself. He didn't want to sit around with anybody, and had his suit and tie on and everything. And so I made what I call a mistake, sort of, but it was a good educational lesson. So I walked up the other side of the table where he was, and I put my hands down on the table, and I said, Well, that was great. What I was doing was showing the difference between how you say something. Oh, that was great. Or, well, that was great. And I said, so how would you feel? And he glared at me with daggers in his eyes and said, I tell you to take your hands off my desk. And it just threw me back, and I thought, whoa. And so I'm standing there thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to get out of this one? So then I said, well, this is just a good example of how people take tone of voice differently. And I moved away from him. And I thought, but that's what happens a lot of times with the tone of our voice. People will maybe not even hear what we're saying if they're actually hearing a tone that is overbearing, unpleasant, angry, syrupy sweet, and not sincere. You know, so we always want to think about how we say something as well as what we are saying, because that is so critical. And so that first impression, you know, when you're interviewing, not necessarily even interviewing for a job, it could be for a promotion, it could be for getting involved in an organization you would just love to be involved in. And so think about those things as well when you're doing that. A nice, good, firm handshake in your first impression, which means hold your hand straight up, have a complete connect in there, give at least 3 pumps, look at their eyes, and say something like, it's very nice to meet you. Okay, that's very important too. A nice, good handshake, good eye contact, and a positive, confident, not cocky, but a positive, confident manner. Have your shoulders rolled back and drop down. Keep your chin up and look very confident, but also engaged in speaking with this person for when you start out. Okay, and whether you're going in for a job interview or you're meeting someone for maybe it's a first date from a match group or something like that, those impressions are going to make a big, big, big difference. I talked to a lady who met someone from a dating website, and he had gotten there, I think it was first, gotten his coffee. She went up and got some coffee, and she sat down, and in 10 minutes she got up, and he said, well, where are you going? You just sat down. She goes, well, I can tell already this isn't going to go anywhere. She got up and left. And so, again, people are making judgments very quickly about us, sometimes that may surprise us quite a bit later on. So the objective is to show that you are the most skilled to solve the company's problems, to create, to build, to bring people together, maybe to increase their bottom line, whatever the case may be. So people sometimes make the mistake of saying, well, how is the growth opportunity? You know, they want to know, first of all, what does this pay? And they want to know, where can I go from here? And so sometimes if people ask questions about where do I go from here, what are my advancement opportunities when they're just interviewing for a particular job, the interviewer is going to be thinking to themselves, okay, this person's going to stay here like a month or two. We're going to spend all this time training him or her, and then they're going to be out because they found something else they want. And so I talked to a friend who was looking for a job to go with her painting, and she said, well, this restaurant said, when could you start? We'll hire you. But I'm really wanting to do this other job instead. So should I just tell them that, well, I'm not quite sure yet. I'm waiting to talk to another company. And I said, if you tell them that, they're going to excuse you, and that's going to be it, because it will tell them right then and there, they're going to train you, and then you're out the door because you found what you wanted to do in the first place. And so I said, you always have to be careful that they don't think this is just a stopgap. Maybe it is, but you don't want to tell them that. What you want to tell them is how much you can do for them. Not, it's all about you, it's all about them. And people always need to do that when they're interviewing for anything, because people want to know, what can you do for me? Not, oh, gee, I'm going to sit here and listen to all the things that you want, because they will not hire people like that at all. And so they're going to check your grooming. You know, a lot of times people will, depending on the job. If it's more in the corporate world, they're going to check your fingernails. They're going to see if your shoes are polished. They're going to do all kinds of crazy things that maybe other jobs wouldn't do. Again, that would go for the dating process a lot of times too. But you know, you want to think about that, because when I worked for a very large corporation that's no longer in Omaha, very infamous company, there was a gentleman that came in, and the lady in the human resources that I worked with interviewed him, and he had all the job skills, he had all the education, great guy. He had everything. And so he sent her not only a thank you note, which you always want to do if you really want this job, but he also sent her flowers. And she would not hire him. And I said, Beth, why won't you hire him? He has everything you're looking for. And she said, well, I noticed he had a few little nubs on his collar, you know, where there's synthetic fabric in there and you get those little tiny fuzz balls. I noticed he had a few of those on his collar, and to me, that showed he lacked attention to detail. I thought, are you kidding me? And so she didn't hire him. And so sometimes people are a little crazy on what they're looking at and looking for when they're hiring someone. So you always want to dress for success. That's very important. And if you do the calendar that I've talked about before, always think about that for maybe, I would say minimum 2 weeks, but it's best 4 weeks. You know, before you go to bed at night, wrote down what you wore, color, style, whatever it was like. Write down how you felt. Did you feel confident? Did you feel professional? Did you feel like you could conquer the world, or did you feel like you wanted a sack over your head and you felt kind of ineffective? And then write down how other people treated you, with respect, with interest, or kind of like one of those 5-minute mandatory interviews where then they just boot them out the door. So what you wear will say a lot. When I used to interview people, I mean, I could not believe how the bare abdomens with the navel rings and all colors of fingernails and all kinds of things, you know, that just didn't work. And so think about those things and then write them down and pay attention in case there's some area that maybe would be better to go into or to wear. If that's your personality, then you want to go to a company that's the culture. That's where it fits. So again, we think about culture in that. But wardrobe is very, very important. Now there's questions that people ask you in jobs and promotions, but also in other areas of your life. Maybe you want to be a baseball coach for kids. You know, there are a lot of areas where people are going to at least silently interview you. And I've heard over and over, if there's like a company party or an event or picnic, something like that, if there's a spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend that accompanies you, they are also silently being interviewed at the same time. So always keep that in mind when you're taking someone with you to something that's important. Tell me about yourself. Okay, well, what they want to know is not everything you've ever done since you were a little kid. What they want to know is the things that you've done that would somehow apply to or relate to the job or the position you're looking for. So when they say, tell me about yourself, you want to think of all the skills and abilities and successes that you had in areas that you can share with them. That's what they're actually listening for. Where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years, 10 years? Some people want to stay in that. They like accounting, where maybe they're in a cubicle and that's it. That's all they want to do, and that's awesome. Okay, but you always want to explain to them where you want to be and why. You know, some people want to work their way up the ladder and work into management, and some people don't. But think about, where do you want to be? What are your career goals? Even if you wanted to be in accounting and stay there and you love numbers, and that's great, would you want to be like a mentor, be someone who could be the leader of a particular project where they need all that analytical intelligence, okay? So think about things that you could do that show you want to help the company with the bottom line, move forward, and be successful in that. You could say, why did you leave? They might say, why did you leave your last company? Well, in that case, you want to be very careful and maybe just, you know, even say something like seeking new growth opportunities in the area that this company is looking for. If people say, oh, there's no room for advancement, or my boss was a real jerk, which I've heard before, that will cause that person that's talking to you to go, no, this person's too negative. So when they ask you why you left a job, try to turn it around some way that's not bashing the boss or something like that, but, you know, growth opportunities, this company has such an awesome reputation, the one you're interviewing with, etc. So you really need to think about that, because that's usually a question that will be asked, even in personal lives. Questions you don't know the answer to, the best thing is to go, you know, I really am not quite sure on that, but I would love to check it out and get back with you. Is that okay? I will get back with you by tomorrow afternoon on that, because maybe you need to look up some facts, some details. But they like that. That shows that you're motivated and wanted to initiate something and move forward. So that's okay. Think of the dialogue. So there could be a question like, so what did you do before you moved to Atlanta? Oh, lived in Washington, D.C. It was so frustrating. I couldn't find a job to save my life. It was terrible. No one would hire me. So I took a few jobs as a sales clerk, but I hated it. Thank God I moved to Atlanta. Okay, now wouldn't that be a real exciting answer? So what did you do before moving to Atlanta? Other side. Lived in Washington, D.C. You know, everyone who wants to be someone comes to Washington to look for a job. So I accepted several opportunities to work in sales, and I really enjoyed it. But I'm glad I moved to Atlanta. So you hear the difference? One is using words like frustrating, couldn't, terrible, hated. And trust me, people really do that. I interviewed people like that. And the reaction shows stress, a lot of times with the eye roll that goes with it. But instead, using positive words like opportunities, enjoyed, which conveys enthusiasm and interest. So think about that, and then think about preparing for a situational interview. People are doing that a lot more nowadays. It's not just asking, well, what did you do in the accounting? What did you do when you were training? What did you do? No, they want a real situation of what did you do, not a hypothetical question, what would you do if? They want the real answer. They want to know what you really have done. And so it could be, you know, whether it's dating friends, you worked on committees, you know, whatever you did in the past, they're going to ask you questions literally, what did you do? And so a lot of times you want to sell yourself on the ideas, on the things that actually happen. Now, even though a lot of times they say, think of 10 to 15 stories illustrating your assets, at least think of 5 stories, things that actually happened that you did that were very helpful, very informational, and it shows your success in being able to handle that particular type of job. Practice telling stories, you don't want to memorize anything, but practice telling true stories about what you've done in the past that really made a difference with adults, with kids, with businesses, etc. Let others help you out and give examples. You know, some people have great testimonies about what you did, or if you have testimonies and letters that your former boss had, maybe the company downsized and so you had to go, but yet the boss wrote you an excellent letter of reference. So don't put those in with your resume, but think about those and have available in case they would like something like that. So set the stage for what you are good at, what you want to do. So always prepare ahead of time for an interview, who you are. And I'm just going to run a few things by you right quick in the last few minutes. And so draw a line down the center of a page. On the left, make a bulleted list of everything the employer that you want to talk to is looking for. On the other side of the list, write down in bullets all the skills and abilities you've had since you were a little kid on up through school, etc., and see how many of these that I have are going to meet their requirements, their needs, and that's what you market. That's what you talk to them about. If you'd love this job, but you're going, you know what, out of these 10 things they're looking for, I have one, it's probably not the best route to go. But do your homework, research the company, find out everything you can about the company, what they do, what the people are like, and nowadays on the internet, you can look up just about anything on there and try to do a check ahead of time of salaries. You never want to say, how much does this pay? You let them bring up what the amount is. That's really, really important. Okay, so do that. But remember, there's just certain things they should not be asking you about your age, which they kind of do nowadays, and things like that. So there are certain questions that really they shouldn't be asking you. So questions you may ask them. You need to have questions to ask them. Okay, that's really, really important. So, because if they say, do you have any questions? You don't want to sit there and go, no. All right. How did this position become available? If you don't know, if they haven't because it could be that, well, this is the fourth person who's left this year. Okay, you may not want that kind of a job. Why did it become available? Oh, because there's so much growth in the company? That's a different story. Why is this position important to you? If they're looking for someone who keeps everything organized in the office and phone, and they want all the files in order, and they want a really good data entry person, but the job wasn't advertised that way, and so you're going, oh, good Lord, I have to be out with people. I have to be very much out there, very active. You're going to know right then, this is what's important to them, not so much me. Another one is, what are the principal duties of this position? Because again, if those duties, you're really going, oh, no, that's not me. Find out ahead of time what the principal duties are, because they may not be advertised in what you saw as far as job skills that they wanted. Is there anything unusually demanding about this position? A lot of times there is. See if they will answer that question. If you ask about opportunities, make sure again that you don't want them to think you're just looking for the next job up. You're just trying to stick your foot in the door, which a lot of times we do, and that's okay, but you don't want to let them necessarily know that. How's job performance measured? Some people let people take the job and run with it. Some are so micromanaging that you can't breathe without them knowing how many breaths you've taken in a minute. So again, how is the performance measured? That's really important, because if you're a free spirit and you're working for someone who's a micromanager, that's going to be not so easy. Could you describe a typical day of the week or job? Okay, that's another one. They should be able to describe to you a typical day. And if not, then they aren't watching what's going on in their department either. How did your career develop over the years? That's a really good one. See what opportunities they have, how theirs developed over the years, and hopefully they will answer you honestly. Regarding the formal reporting relationship, do managers tend to hold tight reins, etc.? I'll be careful with a question like that, but try to find out as much as you can about management. And just in ending, in my last minute, I just want to comment, if there's silence, a lot of times they're checking to see how you can handle stress. So if they don't say anything, unless you find something very pertinent that you want to add to this, you never want to just ramble on, okay? The big question is, again, never ask salary right up front. That's something they need to bring up. If you don't have the answer, tell them you will find out and you will get back to them, and then the time. And always think, is the glass half full or half empty? And just always think of how many of these points are good for me, good for them that I have. But just know you're extremely capable and you can go for it. So I thank you. I'm going to be talking more about promoting yourself in the next program, and so I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.